Yo guys, hello and welcome back to my channel. So the US is going to allow 600,000 Chinese students to study in the United States of America. This news has been making headlines all over the world. And honestly, it feels like US foreign policy towards China is getting pretty shaky. So what's really going on? Why did President Trump say this? What are the economic and political implications? And how is China reacting? In this video, we're going to break it all down clearly and factually. But first, I want to show you all this viral clip of President Trump where he talks about allowing 600,000 Chinese students to come study in the U.S. He says it's very important. Take a look.
As you know, we're taking a lot of money in from China because of the tariffs and the different things, and it's a very important relationship. We're going to get along good with China. I hear so many stories about we're not going to allow their students, or we're going to allow their students to come in. We're going to allow, it's very important, 600,000 students. It's very important.
So yeah, as you just saw in the clip, President Trump is talking about the possibility of 600,000 Chinese students coming to the U.S. Now, these are the kinds of moments where the U.S. loses credibility on the world stage, when what it says doesn't line up with what it does. Because if we rewind just a few months, Trump was being super aggressive about Chinese students studying in the U.S. He started targeting several educational institutions, especially Harvard University. He even claimed that Harvard had ties with a banned Chinese paramilitary group called XPCC. On top of that, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem accused Harvard of promoting violence, anti-Semitism, and alleged links to the Chinese Communist Party. So after all of that, now the U.S. government is saying its doors are still open for Chinese students? And this number, 600,000 Chinese students, is honestly insane. Because if you actually look at the data, back in 2019 to 2020, right before COVID hit, the number of Chinese students in the U.S. peaked at around 372,000, the highest it's ever been. Then from 2020 to 2022, we all know what happened. COVID hit hard, and a huge number of Chinese students left the U.S. and went back to China. And now, here in 2025, President Trump is suddenly talking about accepting 600,000 Chinese students. That's almost double the number of Chinese students USA had at the peak. It's basically a complete Uno reverse from President Trump. Like, what else can you even call it? Now, I want to show you something else. A clip of Trump's policy advisor, Stephen Miller, speaking just a few months ago about Chinese students. And trust me, once you hear it, you'll probably be just as confused as the rest of the world about what Trump is really trying to do here.
Here to unpack all of this is Stephen Miller, White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security Advisor. Stephen, you and I have been talking about this Chinese student racket for many years. China slapped back at this, saying it's unreasonable, it's discriminatory to revoke visas and infringes upon legitimate interests and rights of Chinese students. Your response tonight?
China has been engaging in the theft of American trade secrets, industrial espionage, and the wholesale destruction of our intellectual property, our trademarks, our copyrights for years, Laura. They steal our nation's secrets, they steal our nation's industry, and of course they engage in predatory economic practices designed to cripple our industries and bring American manufacturing to a halt. This has been going on for decades, in earnest, of course, since China entered the World Trade Organization. So President Trump has taken firm and decisive action to say that we are not going to allow our immigration system to be used as an instrument of exploiting America's wealth, America's secrets, or America's industrial might.
And just to be clear, the clip you just watched, it was officially posted by the U.S. government. So yeah, they're definitely aware of what's going on, and yet they're still pushing to let Chinese students into the U.S. And the reason behind this big decision? One word: money. According to NAFSA, an international education group, international students contributed approximately $44 billion to the U.S. economy between 2023 and 2024. They also help support over 378,000 jobs in housing, food, transportation, and even research. The truth is, many U.S. universities, especially smaller or mid-tier ones, rely heavily on international tuition fees just to stay afloat. And Chinese students? They're the second largest group of international students in the U.S., right after students from India. Without them, some colleges could face serious cuts or even shut down programs and lay off staff. So, when Trump called it an economic necessity, this is probably what he meant. But now the real question is the U.S. putting economic gain above national security? Because let's be honest, there's a long documented history of Chinese entities misusing access to American institutions, whether it's research theft, surveillance concerns, or influence operations. These aren't just conspiracy theories. They've been flagged by multiple U.S. intelligence agencies over the years. So yeah, you can see why this decision has people divided. A month ago, I made a video titled China's Secret War on America is Already Happening, where I explained how China has already built a spy network inside the U.S. and how deep they've infiltrated U.S. systems. They're literally everywhere. And if you go back to around 6 minutes 8 seconds in that video, I pointed out that the American government doesn't seem to be restricting Chinese people from entering the United States. It's kind of strange, especially when you look at President Trump's behavior. Sometimes he talks about absolutely crushing China, then the next moment he's praising them. It's all over the place. On the other hand, China is playing a different game. They're planning agro-terrorism against the U.S., and it was recently revealed that China played a significant role in influencing the 2020 presidential election. They've got spies in the U.S. military. They're influencing U.S. politics, stealing American data. Basically, they're doing everything they can to outcompete the U.S. on the global stage. So, with all of this in mind, and considering how China operates, this decision to let in so many Chinese students is pretty bizarre. Because under the guise of studies, this move is going to give Chinese students access to some of the most advanced labs and research facilities in the U.S. And that's where it gets even weirder. So, if President Trump announces a decision like this, backlash is pretty much guaranteed. Steve Bannon, former White House strategist, said it straight up, there should be no foreign students in the U.S. now, especially not from China. Marjorie Taylor Greene, a well-known Republican congresswoman, went even further. If refusing Chinese students causes 15% of U.S. colleges to fail, maybe they should fail. Why is the U.S. letting the CCP prop up our education system? And even Laura Loomer, one of Trump's biggest supporters, is against this decision, saying that China murdered 1.2 million Americans. So, yeah, even MAGA supporters are divided on this one. On one hand, President Trump and his administration were pushing hard to ban immigrants, even announcing plans to start vetting 55 million U.S. visa holders. But now, at the same time, the talks are on to take in 600,000 Chinese students. They're getting tariff breaks, and there are no secondary sanctions for buying Russian oil and gas. It's a lot to unpack. Things are definitely shifting between the U.S. and China, and it's tough to admit, but it seems like for now, China holds more leverage over the U.S. Trump has already pulled back on many of the tariffs he initially imposed on China, and that really hurt his image. And now, with the Chinese student issue on top of everything, it's a tough situation. But then, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick defended Trump's stance, saying this is about economic pragmatism, not ideology.
Mr. Secretary, with all due respect, how is allowing 600,000 students from the communist country of China putting America first?
Well, the president's point of view is that what would happen if you didn't have those 600,000 students is that you'd empty them from the top, all the students would go up to better schools, and the bottom 15% of universities and colleges would go out of business in America. So his view is he's taking a rational economic view, which is classic Donald Trump, looking at.
But again, the issue here isn't just about economics. It's about U.S. national security. A lot of Chinese students study in STEM fields, like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and aerospace. Critics argue that the U.S. is essentially training China's future scientific leaders, who could later use that knowledge to develop military or surveillance technologies. Also, the 2025 Worldwide Threat Assessment Report by the U.S. Intelligence Agency suggests that China is currently the greatest rival of the U.S., and Beijing has made it very clear that it wants to replace the U.S. as the dominant power in East Asia and eventually the entire world. Chinese hackers, backed by the PLA and the Ministry of State Security, are actively preparing for cyber attacks on U.S. critical infrastructure like power grids and water supplies. This isn't just some theory. In 2024, multiple alerts were issued about backdoors being inserted into U.S. systems. To make things even more surprising, on August 25th, the Chinese embassy in Washington issued a warning, asking students to avoid entering the U.S. through Houston's Bush Intercontinental Airport, citing harassment by U.S. customs officials. Their foreign ministry also accused the U.S. of discriminatory and politically motivated treatment of Chinese students. So clearly, this issue has become a diplomatic flashpoint, and it looks like the U.S. is really losing this game. Now, I agree that skilled students often turn into skilled professionals, but allowing 600,000 Chinese minds to roam U.S. campuses could potentially create long-term threats for the U.S. national security. So what do you think? Should countries like the U.S. welcome Chinese students for the economic benefits? Or should national security take priority? Comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.